Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this week. So this week's guest speaker is Niskincina Chaitanya Prabhu. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. So Niskincina is from a Hindu Bengali family in London, and he's often grappled with notions of identity, morality, in-depth Vedic knowledge, and its relevance to modern social discourse. However, overriding all these areas of inquiry was the question of our nature of existence. What is our true identity? Where are we coming from? Where are we going? These were the questions that really preoccupied Niskincina Prabhu's interests. After many years of seeking avenues to real happiness, he finally came across the science of self-realization, which transformed everything. Having served as a monk for over a decade in Mana, he's now seen how the Krishna conscious way of living can fully benefit people in all facets of existence, from the social and the political to the emotional, psychological, and of course the spiritual level. Now heading the School of Bhakti, he focuses on building up and bringing the magic of Krishna consciousness education into people's lives in a contemporary and relevant manner. He's also an avid amateur stage actor and loves entertaining people with Krishna conscious dramas. So with that said, over to you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you for that. I mean, yeah, I find it a little weird when someone reads out this intro on me. I mean, but anyway, it is what it is. But thank you nonetheless. Bit cringing, but it's all good. All good. Yes, I just want to say firstly, thank you for having me on today. And I'm obviously, I know Dharmendra Prabhu for quite some time now. And I actually, to be honest, I probably know some of you here actually. I recognize some names here. So I understand that you're doing this wonderful endeavor of really just going deeper into the Srimad Bhagavatam and having different speakers coming on each week to kind of shed some understanding on the Bhagavatam. I think last week you had Antaranga Prabhu. It's funny because when Antaranga Prabhu was doing the session, I went through the room as he was doing it. So I saw him doing it, because he was doing it from the ashram. So, okay, so as per Dharmendra Prabhu's instructions, today we are going to be looking at a summary of chapters, Canto 1, chapters 6 to 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So it will be an overview. And just to clarify that Bhagavatam is it's limitless. There is unlimited depth to it. You can spend lifetimes, actually, and this is not even just hyperbole. You can literally spend lifetimes studying the Bhagavatam. Some of you may have heard, Bhaktisanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, he spent, how much was it? About 5 months. And he was doing 5 months focusing on one verse of the Bhagavatam, the first verse of the Bhagavatam, and each day, for every day for those 5 months, and speaking 10.5 hours on that one verse. So they did a calculation that if you were to take that marker, it would take like X amount of lifetimes if a person was to live to 100, right? And you take X amount of lifetimes to actually get through the Bhagavatam. And actually, at the end of the 5 months, Bhaktisanta Maharaj actually said that I could speak more, but you wouldn't understand. So yeah, we have to be clear that this is literally just an overview of what the Bhagavatam is. Some of you I know are also doing the Bhagavat Life course that we do at School of Bhakti on the weekends. So some of the points I'm going to mention are kind of familiar from that, but also it's not like that exactly. There'll be some other things that we can talk about as well. Now, quick thing, can I share screen? Yeah, okay. Here we go. Okay, is everyone can see the slide? Okay, yeah, okay. So I thought I should give due deference when it's required. So in terms of looking at the Bhagavatam, one of the things that's been helping me recently, apart from the Bhagavatam itself, which I strive to read each day, I try to read a bit of Bhagavatam each day before I do my rounds, before I do my japa in the morning. And also, obviously, I try to listen as much as I can to the morning Bhagavatam classes that they have in practically all ISKCON temples. But I'm affiliated with the Bhaktivedanta Manor, so I listen to those ones. So that's helped. And recently, I've been facilitating this Bhagavat Life course, which is an overview of the Bhagavatam, which we do at the Manor on the weekends. This course was actually originally designed by Keshav Swami, I'm sure you all know. And so I thought that I would also should give homage to that as well. This is the book Bhagavatam. If any of you ever get a chance, do avail of this book. It's really nice that it gives an overview, because Bhagavatam is immense and it's so deep, and there's so many different narratives going on at certain points, as I'm sure you probably recognize them. So it's good to have an overview so you know like how the narrative is going as well. Okay, so yeah, so we'll start with some prayers. Now, I know we generally do the normal prayers, which is, the Om Jnana Timirandasya, the Mangalacharan prayers that we normally do. I thought today I'll do something different, which some of you I'm sure will be aware of, who kind of like study the Bhagavatam with me. These are prayers compiled by this personality here in this picture. This is, of course, none other than Srila Sanatan Goswami. He is one of our preeminent acharyas, Goswamis, in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. And this is a picture of him with his beautiful deity of Madan Mohan, which obviously one of the main temples that we have in Vrindavan at the moment. I'm sure maybe some of you will see in the future, or have already seen. And he obviously compiled this set of book called the set of prayers called the Krishna Lila Stava, which is all about glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'll recite the prayers and then we can get into it. Obviously, if you want to chant with me, then by all means do. I think some of you who are on the Bhagavat live sessions will know this prayer as well. So, yeah. Sarva Shasti Dipuyusha, Sarva Vedika Satfala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnabhya, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kali Dvanto Didatitya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, Paramananda Pathaya, Prema Varshaksharayate, Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya, Shri Krishnaya Namastume, Madeka Bandhu Mad Sangin, Madguro Man Mahadhana, Man Nishtarak Mad Bhagya, Madananda Namastute, Asadhu Sadhu Tadayin, Atni Chokka Taraka, Hana Muncha Kadachin Mam, Premna Hrit Kanthayospura. Carry on actually. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, wonderful. I was actually thinking maybe can we have a couple of volunteers who want to read the English? That's okay, or maybe I can pick. Maybe Dharmendra Prabhu, why don't you do? Actually, I've already got. Okay, I think 2 volunteers there. So, all right, wonderful. Oh, sorry, who was the first volunteer? I think Induleka Mataji.
Hare Krishna, yes.
And was it Jessica?
It is indeed.
Wonderful. So, Induleka Mataji, why don't you read the first 2 verses, and then Jessica, you can read the second 2 verses.
Hare Krishna, everyone. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all the Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you who are enriched with the givers of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O last breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, You are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of the Kali Yuga. You are actually Krishna who has returned among us. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisances unto you. By reading you, one attains transcendental bliss, for your syllables reinforce love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are an incarnation of Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Indra Mataji. I mean, you can
Hare
see
Krishna.
beautiful verses here. And in these verses, it shows how the Srimad Bhagavatam, it dissipates the darkness. It gives vision. It's the crest jewel, as it says here, enriched with the jewels, right? It's the crest jewel of all the spiritual scriptures. And Krishna, he comes back to Kali Yuga to give the light, right? Sanatana Goswami is saying it dispels the darkness of the Kali Yuga through this Bhagavatam. Each syllable of the Bhagavatam, it gives light, okay? So it's beautiful. Yes, Jessica, over to you.
Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisances unto you. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O giver of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplifter of the very fallen, please do not ever leave me. Please become manifested upon my heart and my throat, accompanied by pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Jessica. So yeah, we can see here that in the third and fourth verse, it shows how this Bhagavatam, Sanatana Goswami is saying, is the only companion for us, right? Madeka Bandhu Mat Sangin, our only friend. Everything else will go. We know that in the scriptures, right? From Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, that, you know, our body may go, our work will go, our family will go. It's all, we can't control any of that stuff. But the Bhagavatam can be a constant companion. It should be the narrative, the soundtrack of our life, our constant companion. Everything we do in life should be done through the prism, the perspective of the Bhagavatam. Whether we're going through difficult times in life, like in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, we have Chitraketu, who lost his son, Harsha Shoka. But we can see from that, we can learn what the Bhagavatam, what solutions the Bhagavatam gives to help us. Or if a person is unfairly treated, like in the 1st canto, in fact, we're going to look at it today, Parikshit Maharaj, you could argue he was unfairly treated by Shringi, you know, the son of the Brahmana. I don't know how much Antaranga touched on it last week, but anyway, you know, the Shamika Rishi gave his son, Shringi cursed Parikshit Maharaj, right? And it was unfair. You could argue it's unfairly treated. Or for example, if a person makes a big mistake, like Bharat Maharaj, you know, he was doing so well in his spiritual life and then he kind of fell down, you know, and became a deer, right? Or whether you have problems in your day-to-day life with your services or your work or your management problems, like Lord Brahma, right? You can't get much more of a bigger manager than Lord Brahma, right? And, you know, we can see from the 2nd canto how the knowledge of the Bhagavatam has helped him as well. So everything can be answered through the Bhagavatam, as you can see in these prayers. Okay, so today we're looking at chapter 6 to 10 of the 1st canto. And again, I'm just referring to the Bhagavad Life. Bhagavad Life is divided into like acronyms, so we're not going to go to all the acronyms here, but one of the things it says that the 1st canto is compared to a slap, right? It's compared to a slap. And it's interesting actually because Jagadananda Pandit in Prema Vivarta, he's a great, obviously, Vaishnava scholar, and this is from a scripture. He says, Krishna bohi mukha hoy bhagavancha kare, nikasta maya tare jhapatiya dhare. So jhapat, you know, like slap. That when you turn your face away from Krishna, Maya is right there to slap that person down, right? So same way, the Bhagavatam starts with a slap. It starts with a slap on Parikshit Maharaj. Now, generally, when we think of a slap is not necessarily a good thing. It's generally not considered to be good to be slapped, right? But sometimes a slap can be good. And it's said that often, even I'm sure a lot of us can relate to it, when we decided that we're going for our life, working outside, going through the 24/7, the life of this world, at some point, we decide to turn to think, you know what, I need to bring some spiritual foundation to my life. The fact that we're all on this call means that we probably went through that journey. obviously we don't need to get personal here, but I would suspect that for a lot of us to come to that stage, we had to go through some slaps, right? Something happened in our lives here and there, which made us kind of come to Krishna consciousness to take it seriously, right? So we can see here that spiritual life often begins with a slap, and it was a slap on Parikshit Maharaj that made him completely focus himself and immerse in how to actually endeavor for self-realization. Okay. So yeah, often Krishna through the material energy and arranges for us to have that slap, to get that momentum, that motion for spiritual energy, for the spiritual journey to start. Okay. Of course, one can also make it clear here that when Parikshit Maharaj is receiving a slap here, is not just a slap of his karmic reaction, which most of us tend to go through. You know, a lot of the slaps we get through in life is because of reactions we're getting from previous activities. With Parikshit Maharaj, it's more Krishna's direct arrangement. You know, so Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna and Maya, who's responsible for our karmic reactions and everything, they are there to do the same thing. Krishna is guiding you to him from the front, and Maya hits you from behind. Yeah. But whichever way you look at it, if we look at this slap in the right way, it can really help us. So, yeah. Okay, so just to give a summary, if we look at the Bhagavatam, first canto, so topics 1 to 6, actually, no, let's look at the first canto itself. The principal conversation in the Bhagavatam is between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. But just like the Bhagavad Gita, you know, like in any book, you have a preface where before the thing starts, there's like a run-up, things that happen in run-up to the book, to the book being spoken. So, and there's a parallel here with the Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, who can tell me who are the main conversations between in Bhagavad Gita? I mean, it's not a trick question, who is the main conversation between the Bhagavad Gita?
Krishna. Arjuna and Krishna.
Yes, exactly. Krishna and Arjun, right? When does Krishna start speaking in the Bhagavad Gita?
Second chapter. Chapter 2.
That's right. The second chapter. Similarly, in this first canto of Bhagavatam, it's like the rundown of all the things that are happening in the run-up to the Bhagavatam being spoken. In fact, Sukadeva Goswami does not even start to speak here in the first canto, just like Krishna doesn't speak in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, right? The first canto is all about the adhikar, the qualification to hear the Bhagavatam being spoken, and the qualification of people who are conversing, the qualification of Suta Goswami and the sages at name Sharanya, the qualification of Veda Vyas conversing with his guru, Narad Muni, and of course, the qualification of Parikshit Maharaj to hear from Sukadeva Goswami. What is the adhikar to receive this transcendental knowledge? It said that you need a good speaker and a good hearer, and the right level of surrender, and you can say desperation. So Parikshit Maharaj obviously got that desperation by getting slapped for this Bhagavad to carry on. Okay. So yeah, the first 6 chapters, they're dealing with what is the Srimad Bhagavatam, what are the contents, who spoke it, why was it spoken, the history behind it, how it all happened. Then from that point onwards, chapter 7 to 11 is basically the example. The goal of Bhagavatam is Srimad Bhagavata Pranalayamam Prema Pumartamahan. The whole purpose of this scripture is to awaken Prema Pumartamahan, awaken the love of Krishna, right? So then we look at examples in chapter 7 to 11 of the love of such devotees like Arjun, like Uttara, like Bhishma, like Kunti, like the residents of Hastinapur, like the residents of Dwarka, all these kind of personalities, right? Then we look at chapters 12 to 15. So chapters 12 to 15 is devotees who have been absorbed in Krishna and went back to Godhead. So it's a kind of continuation of those devotees that develop love for Krishna. So further examples are like Subhadra, Kunti, Draupadi, so on and so forth. And then finally, chapter 16 to 19 is basically the Parikshit Maharaj receiving his slap that put him on this spiritual journey. He gets cursed by Shringi, the son of Shamika Rishi. So this deals with the events leading him, making his journey to the Ganga and having his conversation with Sukadev Goswami, which is where the Bhagavatam properly starts. Okay, so Canto 1 is more about just kind of like appreciating what the Bhagavatam is, the general glorification, and setting the scene with Sutta Goswami and the sages. Yeah. So yeah, glorification, setting the scene. Also the key teachings. What are the key questions that the sages at Naimisharanya ask Sutta Goswami? And then also from there, the history behind how the Bhagavatam was spoken between Sukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj. But before that, also the conversation between Narad Muni and Veda Vyas. Actually, that is where the history starts, which we can talk about. Okay, is that clear so far? Yeah? Good. Dharmendra, is this interactive, or do I just like talk, like, or take as I want? All right, okay. Cool.
Yeah, sorry, Prabhu. It's up to yourself, whatever suits yourself, Prabhu.
Okay, fine, no problem. Well, I can talk for a bit, then I can pause. We can then discuss or talk, questions, whatever it may be, comments, as you wish. Fine. Okay, so okay, I want to do this because I know we're looking at chapter 6 to 10 today, but for me to look at chapter 6, I need to first give a little quick refresher from chapter 4. So chapter 4, let's go back a minute. Okay, so look, you can see here, Bhagavatam chapter 1 is looking at the glorification of the Bhagavatam, the value that it gives, right? How this value, what this Bhagavatam gives us. Chapter 2 sets the scene of Sutta Goswami and the sages at Naimisharanya. Chapter 3 to 4 is some of the key teachings that the Bhagavatam gives us. I'm not going to go into these details because I'm sure the previous speakers have done all this, right? Chapter 4 to 6 is now going to start with the history of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so Sutta Goswami, he's explaining why hearing is so important. When one hears well, all the desires are eradicated, one is established in bhakti. The value of hearing, and we know that in spiritual life, it's always talking about Shravanam, right? Shravan is the key thing. Prabhupada even says so many times, don't try to see Krishna, right? I mean, he says actually you should be seen by Krishna, but also you have to hear. That's the sense that we're going to be using in our spiritual life to actually connect with Krishna. Vision, Drishya will come later, but first is the Shravanam aspect. Okay, so the sages, they've already started asking questions to Sutta Goswami. And at this point, they ask 4 key questions. Number 1, why, when, and where was Srimad Bhagavatam compiled? Okay, why, when, and where? Who compiled this knowledge? Who compiled it, right? That's the key thing here. Okay, and then obviously they go into other questions as well, but we don't need to look at them too much in detail right now, at least not in today's session. But how was Sukadeva Goswami viewed by others? How did his meeting with Parikshit Maharaj occur? How was Maharaj Parikshit born? What was his activities? Why did Maharaj Parikshit renounce everything and travel to the banks of the Ganges? These things we'll look at later, but right now, for today's session, we want to look at this one. How, why, when, and where was Srimad Bhagavatam compiled? Okay, so just keep an eye on that first question. Okay, so just obviously a little bit of history. Who do you think this personality is? Any ideas?
Srila Vyasadeva.
Yes, exactly. That's Srila Vyasadeva, the great Vyasadeva, literary incarnation of Krishna. He's the one that saw the future of Kali Yuga, and he realized that there's going to be a lot of issues arising. There's a famous verse in the Bhagavatam that talks about Kali Yuga. Prayanalpa yusha sabhya kala vasmin yuge janaha manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya upadrutaha. Right? Alpa ayusha, prayanalpa yusha. Alpa ayusha means that there'll be short-lived people. People will have less duration of life in Kali Yuga. They'll be less intelligent. They'll be lazy. They'll be misguided. And above all, they'll always be disturbed. We can see that already. Have you noticed how year by year the mental health issues are rising? In a lot of countries, you'd think that, okay, once the physical issues get mitigated, things are going to be happy. Even today in the morning, and at the Manners, Chaitanya Chanpur was giving a class, and he was talking about there's this philosophy called transhumanism, where they're trying to make this world a paradise through like a technologically created paradise. And how, people sometimes praise how in this nowadays, at least in the Western world, we have so much, progress. There are less people starving, less people suffering from disease. That's good. But there's a flip side. What's happening now in the Western world, mental health, well-being issues are starting to rise, right? And this is all actually there in the Bhagavatam. Vyasdev saw this, and he realized that something needs to be done to preserve this transcendental knowledge that used to be passed down from Guru to Shishya over the ages through oral transmission. Because you have to understand that in previous ages, previous yugas, humanity was of a much higher caliber. So they can actually understand things just by oral transmission. So what he did was he compiled the transcendental knowledge into literary format. He compiled the Vedas, right? Actually, he compiled the Veda. The Veda, the word Veda comes from the root Sanskrit word vid, which means to know. So Veda actually means knowledge. And it was one block. Then he decided to split it into 4, right? So Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva. 4 subdivisions of the Vedas, so 4 Vedas. Then he added a 5th Veda. This is the Puranas. So these are Leelas, pastimes, things like that. And of course, the Itihasas. Itihasas are histories. So for us in Vedic culture, the 2 main histories are Ramayana and Mahabharata. Then what he did was he entrusted different segments of the Vedic scriptures to different, like you could say, disciples, experts, professors, such as Vaishampayan Rishi, Aila Rishi, Roma Harshana, Jaimini, all these types of people. And what they were great personalities, that is. And what they did was they expanded on each branch of the Vedas that Vedavyasa had originally given. And from that, you had a mushrooming of like more and more Vedic books. So many thousands of books were written that are, like coming from the Vedas. Vedavyasa saw this, and he saw that this knowledge has just expanded so much. But then he thought, you know what, for Kali Yuga, this is going to be quite complex, quite vast. I need to bring it back to the essence. So what he did was he condensed the meanings of the Vedas and compiled what is called the Vedanta Sutra. So Vedanta, Veda Anta means the essence of the Vedas, the conclusion of the Vedas, and Sutra means small quotes, meaning that the essence of the Vedas compiled into small quotes. So what a stupendous task. He basically, got the eternal transcendental knowledge that's going to give us that opportunity to make a success of our life as a human being, understand what is the nature of the reality. They talk about Athato Brahma Jigyasa, what is the nature of this reality, to question the Brahman, the supreme reality. And he's given us this priceless knowledge and gave it in a nice breakdown of it with section by section on different aspects of life. And then obviously then gave it the essence in the form of the Vedanta Sutra. You could say he should be very, very happy, very satisfied for doing such a wonderful devotional endeavor for the posterity of mankind. Was he happy? Was he satisfied?
No, he was not happy.
Why not, Indulekha Mataji? Why was he not happy?
Because he did not include the Supreme Personality of Godhead's activities in his writing.
Okay, very good. So he was still dissatisfied. He's still dissatisfied because he did not include the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so what happens at this point is he's in a quandary. He doesn't know what to do. So we'll all experience this in our own lives, where even as we get into Krishna consciousness, you're all in Krishna consciousness, I'm sure, practicing to different degrees. or some of you are maybe interested in looking into it. When you're in Krishna consciousness, you're all going to come to us. I say you, as in we all come to a stage where we come to a brick wall and we think, okay, where do I go from here? Why am I not still satisfied? I thought I did all the right things. This is why it said one needs a guru that will help to show the right way. Before you come to spirituality, and also after you come into spirituality, to guide you within spirituality. So Vedavyas's guru was Narad Muni, the great Narad Muni. Okay. So what did Narad Muni say? He said, Vedavyas, he expressed his despondency to Narad Muni, saying that I did all this, thinking that I can help mankind for the future, but my heart is still not satisfied. There's something wrong, there's something missing, you know? And then Narad Muni, he starts to chastise Vedavyas. Yeah, he starts to chastise Vedavyas and saying that, you know, you have, you've compiled all these things, but you've missed the essence of what this Vedas is all about. Yeah. Narad Muni says, there's again famous verse in the Bhagavatam, Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratislokam abaddavatyapi namanyanantasya yashon kitaniyat shinvanti gayanti ghinanti sadava. Right? That literature which does not contain the name, fame, and form and pastimes of the Lord. What is the point? Only that literature which contains the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the Lord will create a revolution in the impious lives of a misdirected civilization. And he chastised him, but that's okay, because he can, because he's the guru, and he's a sadhu. A sadhu is a person that can cut you with their words. The Mahabharata says that a sadhu has a heart like butter, but a tongue as sharp as a razor. Whereas a politician has a tongue which is soft like butter, you know, because politicians can be quite talky, but they have hearts as hard as a razor, right? So Narad Muni cut him. Shanta eva sachindanti, right? A sadhu, he's meant to cut, right? And so guru, that's what guru does, they cut, but in a good way to help to dispel your misconceptions. So he says that you need to give the actual essence of what this Bhagavatam is about, right? Not what the Bhagavatam is about, what the Vedas are about. Otherwise, you're missing the point. The whole purpose of the Vedas is to bring you to Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, verse 15, right? The second part of the verse, it says, Vedescha sarver aham eva vedyo, Vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I'm the knower of the Vedas, right? So by all the Vedas, I am to be known. You see, if you look at the whole Vedas, it's like a grand, like a panoramic base of knowledge that covers different sections of what life is. Just like in modern universities, you got books on chemistry, economics, you know, biology, sociology, engineering, mathematics, you know, you've got all these different things at university, right? Similarly, with the Vedas, you've got different books, like, you know, Dhanurveda, warfare. You've got Ayurveda, which is to do with health. You've got like Artha Shastra, which is to do with like economic development, things like that. So, you know, there are books on like diplomacy, politics, military warfare, health, wealth, sensuality, all these things. And yes, there is also pastimes of great personalities. There's books on logic, there's books on grammar, there's books on, you know, reasoning and all these kind of wonderful, wonderful things. But in fact, I would say most of the Vedas is to do with how to create a prosperous, materially conducive position for yourself in this material world, to fulfill your desires in a good, pious way without incurring too much negative reaction in fulfilling your desires. And that's wonderful. You know, if you're going to live in this material world and you want to have some material desires that you want to fulfill, you might as well do it in the best way possible. So the Vedas are like an instruction manual for us to live in this world properly, right? But it's not hitting the essence though. Because here's the interesting thing, no matter how much we try to live our lives by these Vedic principles, by karma kandic principles, religious principles, ultimately all the pleasures and the happiness in this world is chapala sukha. It's temporary and it's limited. So when your person realizes that that everything in this world is temporary and limited, then they'll question, so where is the eternal happiness? Where do I experience real happiness? That's when they start to ask, you know, the question, Athato Brahma Jigyasa, what is the purpose of this world? That's when the transcendental aspect of the Vedas comes in, the spiritual aspect. And within that spiritual aspect, the Bhagavatam is the essence of it, right? Srimad Bhagavatam Mahamuni Krite Kimva Parer Ishvaraha, right? Vedavyas, after hearing this from Narad Muni, after getting chastised from Narad Muni for not actually giving focus on the actual essence of what the Vedas are about, he decided to finally compile the Bhagavatam by going into a meditative trance, right? He heard from Narad Muni and he goes into a trance. And as he's going to the trance, what happens, just to show the power of the hearing and why hearing is so important, Narad Muni starts to share his own history. So you can see that from this picture here. So for those of you who don't know, Narad Muni obviously is an eternal associate of the Lord, of Krishna. He's like pure devotee. He's like one of the greatest personalities like ever in eternity. In fact, our lineage, our spiritual lineage is actually ultimately coming, you know, through Narad Muni, right? But he has a history as well in this material world. He used to be a Gandharva. Let me think. I believe his name was Upabargana. Yes, Upabargana. His name was Upabargana. He was a Gandharva. And so the Gandharvas are celestial beings. They don't like reside on this earthly realm. They reside in other celestial regions, other higher dimensions of this reality. And they are expert in the arts, singing, dancing, arts, things like that, but also very powerful people, personalities. And he was assigned to sing at the court. I think probably King Indra, Lord Indra. And the idea, and there will be gurus there, there are great sages, saintly personalities there. And as he was singing, the etiquette is in those higher realms, you sing, you glorify the gurus, you glorify the supreme personality, you glorify the high level personalities. What he started to do, and also because he's a Gandharva, he had these, ladies with him, his Apsara friends and things like that. He started to glorify himself. Almost like, modern day pop songs and or songs where they glorify themselves. I am the best, I'm amazing, things like that. Look at me. It's kind of like that kind of mood. And so obviously this wasn't like seen in a very good light in the court, in the celestial court. So it was cursed that if this is your behavior and this is your consciousness that you want to glorify yourself, then better you go down to the earthly realm and then take a body that is in line with the consciousness that you've exhibited. So he got cursed to take birth as a son of a Sudrani, as a maidservant on Earth, in our Earth planet. For them, Earth is like not a place they don't want to go to. I mean, for us, it's like our home now, but for them, it's like they don't want to go down here. So anyway, he took birth, and then as a young child, he was living with his mom in these, as you can see, in this humble type of village and things. And one day, these group of sages came by, called the Bhakti Vedantas. And they came by, and these are like sannyasis. As you can see, they've even got their dandas here. And they would go from place to place to share transcendental knowledge with people, to enlighten people. I mean, that is what a sannyasi does. They travel from place to place. They don't have any fixed place of residence. They don't have life insurance or like a home and, all that kind of stuff. they don't even like stay bound to any specific family. The whole world is their family. As a Vaishnav, sannyasi, the whole world they take on as their family, and they go from place to place, right? And yeah, they started to share all this wonderful transcendental knowledge, you know, Bhagavat Katha. And this young little child, just by hearing it, he got so absorbed, so immersed in this knowledge that he thought, you know what? I want to be with these people. I want to know about this. This is where I want to be. So it says that simply by hearing the Bhaktivedantas, this group of people, when one hears from the right people, from the right place, then that interaction would take place in the heart, that transformation in the heart. In fact, what happens is one hears from the right place, then they themselves will end up being able to speak well, and the Lord will be situated in their heart. So that's what happened to this young child. And so then what happens, and then he started practicing, and eventually he even got darshan of Krishna. Just by hearing the Bhaktivedanta Gatha and going to trance, he even had darshan of Krishna. But Krishna told him, not yet though. I've given you darshan, but I need you to carry on. And like that, in his next life, obviously then, he became the great Narad Muni. Okay, so this just shows the history of Narad Muni and how he went into trance to receive this transcendental knowledge, and then now he's imparting it to Veda Vyas as well. Okay, is there any questions or comments so far, anyone? No. Okay, we'll carry on. Actually, wait. I just saw something here. How spell Narjvani? Oh, sorry, it's Narad Muni. Narad Muni, Narada. Narad. Narada is his name, and then Muni. Muni is like a great sage. Hope that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So let's carry on. So this is all, like I said, sort of giving the summary of what's happening in chapters 4 to 6. So after all this, Veda Vyas, like I said, he was in trance by the mercy of Narad Muni, his wonderful great guru. And then he started to get the revelation of the divine essence of what the Vedas are. Nigama Galpataror Galita Phalam, right? It says that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. Now, this is interesting. Ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. So like I said, you know, the Vedas is a body of transcendental, transcendental and material literature. So it's like a tree. And of the tree, there are various fruits that are coming from this tree. Beautiful, beautiful fruits. But the Vedas, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit from this. Why is the Bhagavatam known as the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge? Any ideas? It's actually, the Bhagavatam itself talks about it, but any thoughts from anyone? Why is it called the ripened fruit?
Because it explains clearly about the absolute truth.
Okay, because it explains clearly about the absolute truth. Okay.
Directly, I mean, without any indirect reference. Supreme Lord.
Okay. So unadulterated with any kind of material inebriation, any kind of material angles or perspectives or agenda, it just gives you full transcendental perspective. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else? Yes, Prakash Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Was it because Vyasadeva wrote it after writing the other Vedas? So it was really the sort of, this is going to be the most perfect literature.
Yes. You see, Veda Vyas, it said that he received this Bhagavatam in his maturity. Now, Veda Vyas obviously is already a very, very elevated sage. But, there was that one bit missing, that unadulterated essence of what the Vedas is about. And so he had to get that last bit of maturity that came because of the mercy of Narad Muni to just push in that right direction so he can really fulfill the destiny of what the Vedas is about. So this is like the culmination, what they call the pièce de résistance of what the Vedas is about, the raison d'etre, the creme de la creme, right? So that's why it's the ripened fruit which Veda Vyas received in his complete maturity, you know? So yeah, so let's just summarize here. He compiled the Vedas and the Puranas, and then he realized how vast it is. And then from there, he realized that he needed to kind of condense the essence of it. So he gave the Vedanta Sutra. He also obviously gave the Mahabharata. Oh, by the way, so the Mahabharata is there as well, which was also very valuable as a scripture. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita, I'm sure you'll know, is contained within the Mahabharata in the Bhishma Parva section. But still, Narad Muni, Veda Vyas, sorry, was dissatisfied. So then Narad Muni helps. Now I know one of you just mentioned that there was too fast when he wrote down his name. So you can see here, the name is there if you want to take it down. It's Narada Muni. And then what happens after the help from Narad Muni, he finally compiles the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So it's said now at this point, so Narad Muni, he instructs Vyasdev. And he said many times Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken, right? Now, okay, now you have to just stay with me on this. Now we're going to look at the lineage here. Vyasdev instructs his son, Sukadev Goswami, about the Bhagavatam. There's a whole pastime there. It's amazing. We won't go into it right now, but Sukadev Goswami is also a very elevated personality. And then when he was born, he went off, and then Vedavyas got him back by getting some Brahmanas to chant verses of the Bhagavatam. And because Sukadev Goswami is led to leave the material world as soon as he was born. Like not lead a material life, but just go into renunciation. Vedavyas brought him back and then started to instruct him on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Later, this Sukadev Goswami instructs Parishit Maharaj on the banks of the Ganges. Now, this is probably where you're coming to familiar territory. You should probably all be knowing that this element of the narrative. Then Sukadev Goswami, as he's giving Bhagavatam to Parishit Maharaj, there's many other sages that are assembled there on the banks of the Ganges. One of those sages that assembled there is called Suta Goswami. Suta Goswami. He hears Sukadev Goswami instructing Parishit Maharaj. Then later on, many years later, this Sukadev Goswami, he then instructs the sages of Naimisharanya, and sages at Naimisharanya on the Bhagavatam. These sages were led by Shaunak Rishi. Okay, I'll repeat that again quickly. Yeah? So Narad Muni instructs Vedavyas or Vyasdev about Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasdev instructs Sukadev Goswami about the Bhagavatam. Sukadev Goswami instructs Parishit Maharaj about the Bhagavatam. Suta Goswami is there hearing that conversation, and later he then instructs Shaunak Rishi and the sages at Naimisharanya. Now, this last bar here, where Suta Goswami instructs Shaunak Rishi and the sages at Naimisharanya, Vyasdev is there in that audience as well. So Vyasdev is up here and he's down here as well. Just so you know, Vyasdev is one of those personalities known as a Chiranjiva. He lives for a very long time. So you can see that Srimad Bhagavatam has been spoken many times. It's eternal. Just like, we have Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, he says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajashyo vidu sakalena mahata yoga nashta parantapa. This disciplic succession, it continues. This Bhagavad has been spoken many times. It was spoken to Ikshvaku. It was spoken to Vivashwan. It gets narrated again and again throughout history. But when the disciplic succession, yoga nashta parantapa nashta, when it gets broken, the Bhagavad Gita has to be revived again. Similarly, these transcendent literatures, they have to be revived again. So Krishna or his agents will come down to revive this transcendental knowledge again and again and again. Actually, I mean, on that note, the Bhagavatam actually was actually spoken even before all this, originally to Brahma, right? Krishna spoke it to Brahma, at the dawn, the dawn of creation and everything. 4 verses, and those 4 verses have been expanded into these 80,000 verses that we have at the moment. Anyway, many times Bhagavatam was spoken. Vyasadev decided, however, that this version of the Bhagavatam, so each time the Bhagavatam gets spoken, it has its original, obviously, meanings and understandings and the conversation, but then each speaker, because they are also self-realized acharyas, they bring some element of understanding into it to help the generation. So for example, if you look at Srila Prabhupada, he's given the Bhagavad Gita to us as it is, and then he's given some understanding in his purports, because it's necessary for us to understand it through what Prabhupada is giving us, otherwise we can misinterpret it. So similarly, Vedavyas, he decided that the version of the Bhagavatam that Sutta Goswami has spoken to the sage at Naimisharanya is the most relevant in terms of the themes conveyed in it for the people of Kali Yuga. So we decided that this version of the Bhagavatam will be the one that will be put down on paper, like in print. I mean, their version of print in those days. Is that clear so far? Does that make sense? So this basically is giving a summary of the events leading up to and through chapter 6. I trust you probably all covered this in more detail in the past few sessions, but this is the overview. Is there any, before I go on, because now I'm going to go on to sort of chapter 7 to 11, which is the next part. Let me just check. Oh wow, okay. Only got like 10 minutes. Well, Dharmanda, is there opportunity to just go a few more,
Sure. I think people are really encaptured with your class, so I'm sure they'll be willing to stay over, as long as it's all right with you, Prabhu, as well.
Yeah. I mean, I respect everyone's time, so I'm going to try to make sure I don't go too long. But okay, but I do, because it's good to cover the next sort of 4 or 5 chapters, whatever that there is. Is there, before I do go on there, is there any comments, questions, queries at this point?
Hare Krishna, I have a question. So how is Srimad Bhagavatam related to the 4 Vedas that you mentioned?
Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam, there's 2 aspects to it. It's considered as a Purana. So we talked about how Vedavyas, he created the 4 Vedas, and then but he also created supplementary texts like the Puranas, Itihasas, things like that. So the Bhagavatam is considered, is otherwise also known as Bhagavat Purana. But it's not, there are also other Puranas like, Vishnu Purana, Shiv Purana, Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Like this, there are different Puranas. These Puranas, they talk about his pastimes and Leelas and things like that related to different aspects of Vedic history and culture and knowledge and things like that. But the Bhagavatam, so it's part of the Puranic section of the Vedas, right? It's part of the Puranic section of the Vedas. But it's considered, how can I put this in a respectful way? It's considered a cut above the rest because it deals solely with Krishna and his activities. The other scriptures, they'll include material knowledge, how to make it good in the material world. They may also, I'm not saying that the other, Puranas or the other books, they don't talk about Krishna as well. They do, but not in that kind of focused way of bhakti to enable us to directly immerse ourselves and connect with Krishna and break the cycle of birth and death and go back to Krishna. That's the essence of the Vedas, really, isn't it? To basically break the cycle of birth and death, go back to Krishna. The others are kind of like it's diluted. There is Krishna there, but there's mixed in with other things. There's Krishna there. There's also a glorification of other personalities, and it may be difficult to decipher that who exactly is Krishna and why should I focus just on Krishna. So what Narad Muni is telling Vedavyas, you need to give the essence of the Veda and focus just on Krishna's name, fame, form, and pastimes. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is doing that, is giving you the essence of Krishna amongst all the other Vedic scriptures. Does that make, is that clear?
Yes. So you're saying that Srimad Bhagavatam is actually taking out the essence from the Vedas, which are hidden. So Srimad Bhagavatam takes it out.
Correct. It extracts it, which is why, this is an interesting point you mentioned here. You'll see that there are a lot of pastimes that are in the Bhagavatam that were also in other scriptures and other Puranas as well. Many.
Right.
But in the Bhagavatam is giving you the transcendental viewpoint of what the scriptures are about. So for example, okay, I'll give a very brief example, like, you know, the churning of the ocean, right? The churning of the ocean when, when the Asuras and the Devatas are churning the, on Kurma avatar, when they're churning the mountain with Vasuki, the serpent, and then all those, the poison comes out, and then the nectar Amrit comes out and things like that. So that pastime is in other scriptures as well, but it's not made clear that Krishna is the person who's responsible for the success, or that Krishna is the one, the supreme. Whereas when we read it in the Bhagavatam, that's made very clear. There are also, for example, pastimes in the Bhagavatam that are also in the Mahabharata. Like if you look at Bhishma Parva, Sauptik Parva, what's the other one? The one that one where Bhishma talks to Yudhishthira Maharaj about the on the bed of arrows, and he talks to Yudhishthira Maharaj about governance and kingdom.
Shanti Parva, Prabhu.
That's it. That's the one. Yes, thank you, Sanchita. Yeah, Shanti Parva. These are in Mahabharata, but they're also in the Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavatam, they're giving you the devotional perspective, which in the Mahabharata may be there, but diluted. A lot of the other scriptures, like for example, Mahabharata will also talk a lot about dharma, like material dharma. What is the, Lokika dharma, the Loka Sangraha? What is the Raj dharma? What is the Stri dharma? What is your Jati dharma? What is your Kula dharma? All these other dharmas and stuff like that. Also, like your Swadharma, things like that. But in the Bhagavatam, it's very much focused on Nitya Dharma, Bhakti. Right. Dharma aspects are there, but the main focus is, okay, how do I connect with Krishna? So the pastimes in the Bhagavatam are also in other scriptures as well, but the Bhagavatam is giving you the full devotional perspective on them.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's when they say Bhagavatam is a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. That's what because you said Vedanta Sutra is actually a condensed version of the 4 Vedas, and then Srimad Bhagavatam is a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, and it takes out the juice of it, the essence of it. Yeah?
Exactly.
Okay.
And actually, it's interesting you mentioned juice, because that's exactly what actually it can be described as. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm
Krishna.
also thinking about this, the same sort of the juice. The 4 stages has actually developed. I see it like this: developed into the ripened fruit, the sweetest ripened fruit. So it's actually extracted all that nectar and brought it to a sweetness of all the shastras.
That's right. That's right. It's the ripened fruit of the tree of the Vedic knowledge. And also it's important that we're hearing it through the right source. And it's said that those fruits, like there are certain fruits, when they're touched by the beaks of like the birds, like parrots, then they taste even sweeter. So similarly, the Bhagavatam, when it's coming through the mouth of Sukadeva Goswami, it's all the more sweeter. And Sukadeva Goswami, interestingly, is known as Radharani's parrot. I mean, not known as, he is Radharani's parrot. So there's a beautiful analogy with the tree, the fruit, the parrot, and you can see how it relates on a very practical level as well.
How sweet, because they say from the tongue of these saints, they've been pecked by those parrots that eaten the ripened fruits.
Yeah, exactly. When you hear the Bhagavatam and you hear the right consciousness with the right focus, you have conquered death. You've conquered. In fact, I'll just share this quick thing on you, and then we can, I think after this, we'll just quickly go through the next chapters. You know, Sukadeva Goswami, so in his previous life, you know, he was Shuka, the parrot, and Radharani's parrot, right? So when Radharani and Krishna, when they unmanifested their pastimes from the world, Shuka was distraught. He was flying around. He's a parrot, remember, right? So he's flying around everywhere, you know, flapping in frustration, I guess, right? Like, where are my beloved? Where's my beloved Radharani? Where's Krishna? Where's more Radharani? Because, you know, Radharani is actually his, you know, master lord, right? Where's my beloved? Where's Krishna? Where's my beloved? Right? He's just, you know, flying around everywhere. And then he realized that, you know what? Well, maybe they've unmanifested themselves from this mortal realm. But I know what? I know that wherever there's Harikatha being spoken, I will go there. Because that is non-different from being with Krishna and Radharani. And he's flying around everywhere. Where could Harikatha being spoken? At that time, Lord Shiva was just about to speak the Bhagavatam to his wife Parvati. So, you know, we said Bhagavatam has been spoken many times in history by different personalities. So there's another aspect of it. Lord Shiva closes his eyes and he wants to talk to Parvati in confidence. So they're in like this private grove, and he closes his eyes, he puts his trishul, his trident in the ground, and he starts to narrate the Bhagavatam all the way from, like, you know, the first canto, going all the way, you know, up to, you know, canto 10, whatever it may be. And as he was relating the Bhagavatam, Sukha, the parrot, flies and perches himself on a tree, hearing the Bhagavatam. And every now and again, when Shiva would relate the Bhagavatam, he would then pause and say to Parvati, with his eyes closed, that, shall I go on? Shall I go on? And Parvati said, yes, please, go on, go on. Afterwards, as he's continuing, and, you know, Bhagavatam is obviously long conversation, then after a point, Parvati stopped responding, and Sukha, the parrot, would imitate Parvati's voice to say, yes, please, go on, like this. And after a certain point, Lord Shiva is narrating, and then he opens his eyes, and he sees this parrot, like sitting there on a branch looking at him. And then he gets really mad. He's like, oh my God, this is meant to be a private conversation. So he picks up his trishul, trident, and starts basically chasing the parrot. He's like, come back here, I'm going to kill you. And he starts running after Sukha, the parrot. The Sukha is flying away. And he flies and eventually flies up to the Himalayas. And he enters into, and Veda Vyasdev and his wife are there in the Himalayas. And he basically flies into and takes shelter in the womb of Veda Vyas's wife. And then Shiva comes running after. And then Veda Vyas stops and saying, Lord Shiva, what's the matter? Why are you running? Why are you so agitated? He goes, oh, that rascal parrot. It was, it was hearing me speak Bhagavatam, but it was meant for confidential ears. I'm going to kill that parrot. And then Veda Vyas says, why? He's already heard it. He's already deathless. And then Lord Shiva was like, okay, you're right. He's heard the Bhagavatam. He's already gone beyond death now. So then now think about this, right? That's Sukha the parrot. He's in the womb of Veda Vyas's wife. So he then in his next life is Sukadeva Goswami. So Sukadeva Goswami has already heard the Bhagavatam before he even takes birth. And then after he takes birth, he then gets instructed on again by Veda Vyas. Anyways, he's beyond death. I thought I'd just share that. Okay, anyway, let's carry on. So next point that we want to look at now is, okay, so we've looked at the history of the Bhagavatam. Now we're going to look at examples of great devotees who have developed the love of God that is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, at least in these chapters. So let's recap. Chapters 1 to 3 is basically talking about Suta Goswami and the sages. Chapters 4 to 6 is talking about Narad Muni and Vyasdev that we just spoke about now, and in terms of the relation to Bhagavatam. So now we're going to look at chapters 7 to 11. Now, this is where it kind of corresponds with Mahabharata, right? some of the chapters of Mahabharata. Okay, this is also in these set of chapters, we're also going to see Parishit Maharaj being born, and various devotees who had amazing love for Krishna. Okay, so let's start off. Okay, so this is a very beautiful verse. Now, this is not from the Bhagavatam, but it's good to mention it here because the ultimate goal of the Bhagavatam is love, right? In fact, Rupa Goswami says that the soul's primary desires is to give love and be loved. That's the fact. Ultimately, everything we do in life, all humans, no matter who you are, what consciousness you're in, we're all looking for love, to give love to someone and to be loved. That's what it's all about, right? So this is a verse from a scripture called Chaitanya Manjusa. This is which is by Srinath Chakravarti, and this is a statement given by that is according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I'll just quickly recite it. Aradhyo Bhagavan Vaje Satanayas Tadhama Vrindavana Ramya Kachitupasana Vrajavadu Vargeshaya Kalpita Srimad Bhagavata Pramala Amala Prema Pumartho Mahan Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matamidam Tatra Dharana Paro. So this is, actually maybe we can have someone read it, the English that is. Maybe, okay, I'm seeing Dharmendra and Rohana in front of me. So Dharmendra, we've heard from you. Rohana, do you want to read this one?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, sure, Prabhu.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Rohan, I can recognize your voice. Rohan, is it okay then if Rohan does it? Great. Rohan, go for it.
Yeah. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is to be worshipped along with his transcendental abode Vrindavana. The most pleasing form of worship for the Lord is that which was performed by the gopis of Vrindavana. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless authority on everything, and the pure love of God is the ultimate goal of life for all men. These statements for which we have the highest regard are the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Thank you. So, okay, this is something, this verse summarizes the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness, really. So you got 4 things here. Number 1, the goal. So based on what we just spoke about, what is the goal of Srimad Bhagavatam?
Pure love of God.
The Lord.
Okay, that's 2 ahead. What just before that? Love.
Tells us how to die because it's about Parikshit Maharaj.
Beyond dying, it's just you don't just pause there. Beyond dying and all that stuff, it's love. That's the one thing you need to understand. The goal of Srimad Bhagavatam is prema, love. We're just breaking it down here to 4 things. Goal is love. Next to is object. To love something, there has to be an object of love. Like, Romeo's object of love was Juliet. That's obvious, right? So, and vice versa. Everyone has to have an object of love. So as far as the Bhagavatam is concerned, as far as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is concerned, what should be the object of love for all spirit souls? Like everyone.
Love of God.
God.
Krishna.
Krishna.
Yeah. Look here, just look at the verse. Krishna, not just God, Krishna, the most intimate personal aspect of God, the son of Nanda Maharaj, right? Krishna of Vrindavan. Okay, so that is the object of love. He's the object of love. If you give your energy to love him, you will never be dissatisfied. all the other loves that we have in this world, no matter how good they may seem, they will eventually let you down. I know that sounds pessimistic, but it's the truth, right? Everything, and that's not in a bad way, but that's the reality. It's temporary. It will not last. If you're lucky, you might have a really good love in this world, but even that will not, like, you know, it will finish at some point. Krishna is the only person who will never let you down, okay? Now, according to the verse, who are the exemplars, the examples of such amazing love for Krishna?
Gopis.
That's right, the gopis of Vrindavan, right? The most pleasing form of worship for the Lord is that which was performed by the gopis of Vrindavan, right? And how do we access, learn, and follow to I'm getting myself twisted here. Yeah, how do we access that love? What is it that we can follow to get us that love?
Srimad Bhagavatam.
That's right. Srimad Bhagavatam, the spotless on authority and everything, and pure love of Godhead, right? So this is the key thing. The goal is love. So these next few chapters are all going to be talking about devotees who basically ended up completely loving Krishna. Yeah. It's sad, isn't it? When you love Krishna, your path becomes wide. But when you have no love for Krishna, your path becomes narrow. And Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, he's the author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said that if there's no love, then life is impoverished. So just give me the salary of the love of Godhead, right? If there's no life, then your life is poor. Generally, people think of a rich life, meaning your bank balance, but that's not actually true wealth, because, you know, your bank balance will go. Even if you're really rich and all the rest of it, when you die, it's not going to go with you. And that's if you're lucky. Sometimes money may go even before you die. So, but real love, richness, wealth is actually when you've actually got a really fulfilling love, and the only thing that can do that is love of Godhead. Okay. So yeah, ultimate goal is love. Actually, what I'll do, let me skip this verse because we don't need to get into this right now. Don't worry about this. Just because I'm conscious of the time. So yeah, okay, let's go from here now. Okay, so in these chapters, we're going to look at some amazing examples of devotees who have exhibited the love for Krishna. Now, I don't know how far you've got in terms of your verse chapter by chapter sessions, because I know what I'm doing right now is a summary thing. Can anyone remember from chapters like 6 or 7 to 10, 7 to 11, the examples of devotees that are given who kind of like really developed love? I mean, okay, I'll be honest with you, the picture itself is a bit of a giveaway in one of them anyway, but any examples that we can think of?
Kunti Maharani.
Yeah, we have Kunti
Okay.
Maharani. This is Bhishma Dev.
Yep.
Yes.
That's good. Anyone else? What about this person?
Yudhishthira Maharaj.
Yeah, no, I gave you a clue right there. It's on the thing. Arjun.
The Pandavas.
Yeah, no, but specifically Arjun. Pandavas are there, and Pandavas are amazing. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, we're going to look at Yudhishthira Maharaj later on. Actually, no, I say that probably not in this session. Yudhishthira Maharaj will come later. Don't worry about that. Probably the next person who's doing the summary after me will cover Yudhishthira Maharaj. But for this purpose, for these chapters, yeah, so it's Arjun. Also, this very amazing personality.
Draupadi.
Uttara.
Draupadi.
No. Kunti you mentioned.
Parikshit.
No. So Vidura is all going to come. You're mentioning these wonderful personalities. Draupadi, Vidura, Yudhishthira Maharaj, they're all going to come later. But in terms of, we're looking at this specific set of chapters. That's so you're going to have to tax your brain. I'm getting specific. This section. Anyway, I think we've got most of them here. So Arjun, Uttara, Kunti, Bhishma Dev. So look at in the brackets, we've got the chapters here. Chapter 7 talks about Arjun. Chapter 8 talks about Uttara. Chapter 9 talks about Kunti Devi. Chapter 10 talks about Bhishma Dev. And then I think today we can just talk about chapter 10. But obviously, if you go further, chapter 11 and chapter 12, they talk about the residents of Hastinapur and Dwarka. Hastinapur, their love for Krishna is like Vipalamba Bhav. It's love and separation, because, you know, after the war, Krishna leaves Hastinapur, isn't it? And then Dwarka residents, their love is in union, because Krishna's coming back to Dwarka. So that's Sambhoga Bhav. Vipalamba Bhav is love in separation. Sambhoga Bhav is love in union, right? Two aspects to that love. But we're not going to, I don't think we're going to talk about them today. Let's focus on these four today. Arjun, Uttara, Kunti, Bhishmadev. So, okay. Now, just to remind you, you know, there was the first question of the four questions that the sages gave to Sutta Goswami. The first one was when, where was, why was the Srimad Bhagavatam compiled? Now we're going to look at the other three questions, right? Well, I say other three as in, like, from this point onwards, the other three questions we looked at. So how was Sukadev Goswami viewed by others? How did his meeting with Parikshit Maharaj happen? How was Maharaj Parikshit born? Why did Maharaj Parikshit renounce everything? So the next few chapters will talk about this, right? But first thing though, we're going to look at these great devotees and their state of love that they were in. Okay, so I mentioned that from this point onwards, these next chapters, some chapters 7 to 10, 7 to 11, they correspond with different chapters of the Mahabharata. So chapter 10 of Mahabharata, you can see here. So, okay, Mahabharata chapters are called Parvas. So the final 9, there are 18 Parvas in Mahabharata, right? You can see here, just like there's 12 cantos in the Bhagavatam, and within this canto, there are 19 chapters. So you can see here that the final 9 Parvas of Mahabharata, so 10 till 18, they match with chapters 7 to 15 of Canto 1 of Bhagavatam. Okay, in terms of the events and the timeline, the historical timeline. So you can see here, chapter 10 I'm sorry, like you got after the war. So you got what is called the Sautik Parva. So so you know you got the war itself, the 10th day of Kurukshetra, Bhishma falls. Then 11th to the 15th day of the war, Drona is in command. Then he falls. Then 16th day is Karna. Then 18th day, most of the Kauravas are dead. Duryodhan goes to the lake. For those of you who know Mahabharata will know what I'm talking about here. Duryodhan goes to the lake. Bhima then kills him. Okay. Then we get to this chapter 10th Parva of Mahabharata, Sauptik Parva, if you look at the left column. That relates to chapter 7 of Bhagavatam. So what happens after Duryodhan goes to the lake? Bhima kills him. That's all the Kauravas dead now. The Pandavas won at great cost. The only ones left alive are Kripacharya, Kritavarma, and Ashwatthama from the Kaurava side. Ashwatthama then goes to the Pandava camp at night. That's why Sauptik Parva means the book of the sleeping warriors. What does he do as he goes to the Pandava camp at night?
Kills them all the kids, all their sons.
Yes, the Pandavas at that time for that night have gone somewhere separate. Ashwatthama, in a state of rage, envy, madness, kills them, kills the rest of the Pandava camp. That's why I said at the end of the war, the only people left are like Krishna, the Pandavas, and this Ashwatthama, Kripacharya, Kritavarma. Okay. Afterwards, after the whole massacre happens, when the Pandavas return to the camp, the 5 Pandava brothers with Krishna, they realize that the whole camp has been slaughtered. And at that point, you can imagine the devastation and the distress that the Pandavas go through. All those people, soldiers, sons, everyone is completely destroyed. Okay. And it's at this point that actually, in fact, it's said that at this point that, Duryodhan has not fully died yet. Ashwatthama, he actually kills all the Pandava camp people. And afterwards, he realizes that the Pandavas themselves are not there. So he's really, really frustrated. So what he does, he felt that he could avenge against the Pandavas and bring their heads to Duryodhana as he's lying there bleeding from his fight with Bhima on the ground. So what he does, he thought that, let me at least chop the heads off of the Pandava sons. So he takes each Pandava had one son by Draupadi. He chops the heads off and takes them to Duryodhana as he's lying there. Now Duryodhana, his whole body is covered in blood and his eyes are blinded because of the blood that's in his eyes. He can't see properly and he's hardly living now. He's pretty much almost dead. And then Ashwatthama says to him that, look, I've got you these the heads of the Pandavas. And Duryodhana was like intrigued, like Ashwatthama was able to kill the Pandavas, like because he knows how powerful they are. And in a blind state, he actually says to Ashwatthama, give me the heads. Ashwatthama gives him the heads, and in his hand, because Duryodhana, even in a half dying state, he's still super strong. He actually grabs each skull in his hand and squeezes it and crushes each skull. And then he basically turns to Ashwatthama and chastises him heavily, saying, you liar, you fool. You thought you could trick me. Shame on you. These are not the heads of the Pandavas. I know how powerful the Pandavas are. Their bones are like steel. Their skeleton, their bodies are like steel. There is no way that I will be able to crush their heads in my hand. You've brought me their sons. You fool. You know what? I would have been happy if their sons would have stayed, because you know what? At least the Kaurava dynasty would continue. Because now what's happened, the Kaurava dynasty is finished. There's no lineage, isn't it? Anyway, so then Ashwatthama basically goes away, dejected. Meanwhile, the Pandavas come. They realize the whole carnage that's happened overnight. And at that point, Arjun then starts chasing. Bhima and Krishna say to Arjun, bring Ashwatthama and kill him. So Arjun chases him. And as he chases him, he captures him. And at that point, Ashwatthama, he does something horrendous. He's got celestial powers of celestial weapons because of his father, Drona. And he releases a celestial weapon called the Brahmastra. And at this point, it says that when he releases it, what's Arjun's response? At the Brahmastra, imagine you got like this massive, like powerful weapon coming at you. What, you imagine like, what kind of like consciousness we'd be in. Does anyone know what was Arjun's response when this happened?
Arjuna thought that it was the end of the world and he sent out Krishna to ask for help.
Okay, so actually before he even asks for help, he's still at this intense period. He's so much in love with Krishna that he first glorifies him. Who would be glorifying someone when they're about to get killed? Like you just want to instantly ask, but he's so much in love that his love goes even beyond his own protection. So he first glorifies him, then asks for protection. Krishna, Krishna Mahabaho, mighty armed Krishna. So this is an example of Arjun's love, right? Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about different symptoms of surrender, Rakshishyate, and Arjun's faith was so uncompromising in Krishna that even at this intense period, he just knew that Krishna is going to protect him. He was completely surrendered to Krishna's will, right? So this is an example of Arjun's love for Krishna, but it carries on. What happens is eventually, then obviously the narrative carries on, and I'm sure you'll know Ashwatthama, Krishna then tells Arjun that you release Brahmastra, because Arjun's also got the ability to fire off Brahmastras. So you release the Brahmastra because two Brahmastras coming together will neutralize each other. And at this point, Ashwatthama is completely humiliated. That point, Draupadi then comes. And Draupadi says, after all the suffering, now imagine how much Draupadi has gone through in the Mahabharata. Draupadi actually says to Arjun that, you know what, don't kill him. I know he's killed all my sons. I'm paraphrasing here, but it's in the Bhagavatam. He basically, she's got every right to demand Ashwatthama's execution. But she says, no, because I don't want Ashwatthama's mother to go through the pain that I went through. So then after what happened was that Arjun's in a dilemma because on one hand, he's got Krishna and Bhima telling him to kill him. And on the other hand, he's got Draupadi telling him, no, let him live. He doesn't know what to do. So then he turns to Krishna and Krishna comes to a compromise. Krishna says, okay, I tell you what, take off the jewel of, I think, Kai's jata, his hair, and take off the jewel off his forehead. Ashwatthama had a jewel in his forehead, which gave him a lot of potency. When he took it off, a lot of blood and pus was coming out. And by taking off his jata, like the hair knot, is basically, he's no more a man anymore. He's become humiliated, insulted, like an ostracized person. So Ashwatthama is completely humiliated at this point. Yeah. But he still is not fully repentant. He still doesn't accept fully. So what does he do at this point? Any ideas?
He released another Brahmastra at the womb of Uttara to kill the last lineage of the Pandavas.
That's right. So at this point, so Arjun's son is Abhimanyu, who died in the Mahabharata war. Abhimanyu's wife is Uttara. Uttara was pregnant with, the son, Abhimanyu's son, her own son as well, obviously, called, well, we'll know now, isn't it? Parikshit Maharaj. He's in the womb. And Ashwatthama thinks that, you know what, let me at least get one last bit of revenge in. And he fires the Brahmastra at Uttara's womb. And what is Uttara's mood at this point? Same. She's like completely just turns to Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Mahabaho, like, oh, mighty armed Krishna. Complete reliance on Krishna. And what does Krishna do? He comes in, he covers the embryo of Uttara and protects Parikshit Maharaj whilst in the womb. And that was the first point at which Parikshit Maharaj gets darshan of Krishna. And that darshan that he gets in the womb when he's still a fetus in the womb of his mother, he never forgets. And that's why his name, Parikshit Maharaj, is related to Pariksha. Pariksha means examiner. For the rest of his life, he searches and examines looking for Krishna. He's examining for Krishna. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? He becomes a great king, but still that darshan never leaves him from when he's a fetus, looking for it for the rest of his life. Okay, so we can see here that with Arjun and Uttara, they approach Krishna for protection, right? Which is okay, because sometimes we ask as well, should we call out to the Lord for protection? Absolutely. If you're going to call out to anyone for protection, take shelter in Krishna. Akamo sarva kamo va moksha kamo udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether you have many desires or no desires, you go to Krishna. He will protect you. Trust in Krishna. Have faith in Krishna's plans. Yeah. Okay, let's carry on, and then I will take questions in a bit. But let me just get through this because we're almost getting there. Okay, Kunti. Okay, what a great personality, Kunti, isn't it? Yeah. Her love for Krishna is unsurpassed, right? I mean, she starts an outpouring of prayers to Krishna. So many beautiful prayers. Srila Prabhupada even writes a book on it. I don't know if you guys heard of, the prayers of Queen Kunti. It's quite a famous book in our movement, right? These are wonderful prayers, and yet she went through so many difficulties. In the midst of it all, she had so much love. She realized that Krishna was right there looking after her in the midst of all these difficulties, right? So this is why Kunti is so amazing. She underwent acute suffering. And yet after all this, it just shows her surrender to an even a greater degree. Okay, I'm going to bring in a little Bhagavad life here. So those of you who are doing Bhagavad life me will know this one because I think I talk about this slogan like every week or something. But from one thing we learned from Kunti Devi is that she underwent so much, but because she had higher knowledge, Brahma Gyan, her expectations of the material world were different to our expectations of the material world. So one thing that we learned from Kunti Devi is to adjust your expectations, right? Adjust your expectations. We have so many plans of how things should work, how people should deal with us, how they should treat us. But now let's be honest, does life ever go that way? Probably not, right? Often what happens, our expectations, they don't always correspond with reality. And then what happens when our expectations are not realistic, then we cannot accept the situations we're in, and our mind becomes disturbed. But because Kunti Devi had adjusted her expectations, not only was she able to accept each situation, she was able to accept each situation as Krishna's message. She was able to see Krishna's hand behind everything, and her love was able to just exponentially grow more and more and more. So 3 things we understand from Kunti Devi's example. Number 1, adjust your expectations. Number 2, accept your situation. We all have dealt some certain cards in life, maybe based on our past karma, whatever it may be. Look at Vidura. Did Vidura ever complain that he was a son of a Sudra and that he couldn't be king? Because let's be honest, if you look at Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura, Vidura arguably is probably the most qualified of all of them to be a really good king, right? But he was discriminated against in the within the royal household. But did he ever like, you know, get bitter about it? No, he accepted the situation. So adjust expectations, accept your situation, and third thing is aspire for connection. Whatever situation you're in, aspire for connection, that connection with Krishna. Kunti Devi, no matter what situation she's in, she always was able to access love for Krishna. If anything, the more she was going through the obstacles, it made her get more and more absorbed in Krishna. Sometimes, you know, Krishna does this. You know, sometimes we're put in difficult situations, but you know, sometimes Krishna does that deliberately because it forces us to actually go towards Krishna more. That's why, you know, we said at the beginning of the session, slaps. Sometimes a slap is a good thing in spiritual life because it forces us to have that momentum towards Krishna, right? Devotees should not be surprised with miseries of this world. We are not a pessimistic movement. I must say this, we are not. Although when you do read the Gita, it does talk about Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, birth, death, old age, disease. It does talk about the 3 kleshagnis. You know, the miseries from the mind, the body, the miseries from the self, from nature, from others. It does talk about dukkhalayam ashashvatam, right? This material world is a place of dukkha. It talks about padam padam yatvi padam, obstacles at every state, every step. Mityu samsara vartmani, death everywhere. But here's the thing though, what Krishna consciousness does is, yes, it's showing the reality of this world, but also giving access to something much higher. Once you accepted the situation, you can start to see Krishna's hand. So in this, and actually in this very chapter, chapter 8, one of the most famous verses that we have in Krishna consciousness, which Prabhupada mentions a lot in his lectures. This is from chapter 8, so Canto 1, chapter 8, verse 25. Prabhupada says, well, not Prabhupada says, Kunti Devi says, Vipada santuta shashvat tatta tatra jagad guru bhavato darshanam yatsyad apunar bhava darshanam. So this is basically Kunti Devi saying, give me more misery, give me more troubles, more challenges, so I can keep remembering you. Now, of course, that's very elevated. I'll be honest with you, me personally, I'm not on that level where I can pray, I can make a prayer like that. I'm not, you know, I'd rather like, you know, do my bhakti peacefully, but it's something for us to appreciate that where Kunti Devi's love is, that she's ready to take, you know, she's ready to accept anything this world gives us because she knows that it's only going to serve her to go take more and more shelter and connect with Krishna. Okay. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about the prayers right now. We don't have time for that. Okay, final bit. So this is chapter 10. So we've gone through, who do we go through? Arjun, Uttara, Kunti Devi, and of course, Bhishma Dev. Right. So, okay, now here's the thing. Bhishma Dev, amazing, amazing personality, right? We know this. What happened was, you know, when Yudhishthira won the war, the Kurukshetra war, so many millions and millions of people had died in this war, right? And Yudhishthira was feeling very bad that all of this was just for him to be king, you know, and he didn't know how to accept it. But then at that point, Krishna himself says to Yudhishthir, go to Bhishma Dev now. You have valiantly done your duty as a Raja Rishi, slain these enemies like a saintly king. Now you act like a proper ruler. Be a Raja Rishi. Learn from Bhishma Dev, your grandsire. Bhishma Dev at this time was on a bed of arrows, and he was waiting for what is called Uttarayan. Uttarayan means the rising sun, the most auspicious moment to leave his body. This is chapter 10, right? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he also explains that Uttarayan also means the one who had arisen in the womb of Uttara. So if you go back, you remember when Parishit Maharaj was in a fetus in Uttara's womb, who had arisen in the Uttara's womb to protect Parishit Maharaj? Who had come in the womb to save Parishit?
Krishna.
That was Krishna, yeah. Waiting for Krishna. So Bhishma Dev, he was waiting for Krishna as well. Not just the rising sun, but waiting for Krishna, the real sun, the real rising sun. Because Suradev ultimately is obviously getting all his energy and his potency from Krishna, right? You could say he's an expansion of Krishna, demigod expansion, that is, right? So he's waiting for Krishna and then he would leave the world. So just through his actions, he's doing the final lesson. When Krishna and the Pandavas came to see Bhishma Dev said, Nahasya karhichit papam. Who can know the plan of Krishna? You had all the piety, the wisdom, and Krishna as your best friend. And look at all the suffering you've been through. Who can know the plan of Krishna? And it said that at this point, he starts giving instructions to Yudhishthira Maharaj and then ends his life by composing prayers to Krishna and leaving with Krishna in front of him. The perfect way to actually leave his body, What a way. I mean, there are some key personalities that we know of who actually left their body thinking of Krishna, speaking about Krishna, if they have the power to speak of Krishna, obviously. Actually, I'll tell you what, look at Srila Prabhupada. I don't know if you've seen the video footage of him in his deathbed. There's it's on YouTube, right? With all the disciples around him in Vrindavan. And, right to the last bit, he's basically giving instructions on Krishna Katha, right? And, obviously in Vrindavan, so therefore definitely Krishna's there with him, leaving. What a beautiful way to leave. In Ramayana, you got Jatayu, Jatayu, he's lying there after, he fights Ravana and he's lying there bleeding. And then Ram comes, afterwards, and Ram then picks up Jatayu's head in his lap, looking at him. And then Jatayu's actually saying Ram, 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 and looking at Ram at the same time. And then Ram, what does he do? As a son, he performs the final rites of Jatayu to leave. So this is such a perfect way in which a devotee can leave their body. Final lesson. So, for example, we can see that with Arjuna and Uttara, they took shelter. Their love was in a mood of protection from Krishna. Kunti Devi's mood was a love of getting shelter no matter what the world throws at you. And Bhishma's mood was a love of pure devotion at the time when he's about to leave. It's actually said when he's about to leave, he actually makes a statement to the people around him that I've given everything, that I've got in my possessions. My body, my energy, my intelligence, everything I've given to Krishna. Now I've just got one last thing to give. This is in the Mahabharata, my daughter. Now at this point, everyone's like, what? Bhishma daughter? Because Bhishma Dev is a celibate. He didn't get married, right? Because of his vow. But he said his daughter, meaning his mind. Now's my time to give my mind to Krishna. So yeah, such an amazing personality that we looked at in this chapters. So I think I'll pause here because now we're going to look at the chapter 11. We'll carry on with the love of the residents, as you can see here, of Hastinapur. And then obviously when Krishna then finally comes back to Dwarka, you look at the love of the devotees of Dwarka, right? So you can see that these chapters 6 to 10 is all about love. Srimad Bhagavatam Pranayamalam Prema Pumartamahan. It's all about love, right? And yeah, like we said, learned from Kunti Devi, adjust your expectations, accept your situation, and aspire for connection. Okay, so I've gone over time. I'm very sorry, but I'm going to pause and finish now. I don't know if there's any comments or yeah, from anyone. Then yeah, can call it for today.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, you said love is the aim of Srimad Bhagavatam. So why is it mentioned in the beginning?
Why is what mentioned in the beginning, Mataji?
Love. You said these chapters are all about love.
Yeah.
But you said before that love is prema is the aim of Srimad Bhagavatam. So my question is why is it mentioned in the beginning?
That's a good question, actually. So, okay. So basically, you're in the sense that if love is the goal, is the result. So why is it at the beginning? In the sense that when you go through a book, then the result is at the end, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay, yeah. Okay, I'll use an analogy here, actually. Srila Prabhupada said that the Bhagavatam is like a rasgulla. So I don't know if you're familiar with the rasgulla. So it's like a Indian sweet, very nice sweet, right? And you know, like wherever you eat the bite into rasgulla, it's all like juicy and sweet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you have to think of these books, these literatures, they're not like normal books where you know, you go through beginning, middle, and end. Oh, there is a beginning, middle, end to these books, and yes, they should be read in a certain order. But at the same time, the whole book from start to finish is exuding love. So any point at which you read the Bhagavatam, there'll be an outpouring of love going on. Whether it's the beginning, the whole book. It's not that you have to wait till you finish the book and at the end you've got the love coming. Even if you read the beginning of the book, you're going to get benefit of accessing love for Krishna. Prabhupada even says, even if you read one verse, one paragraph, one line of the Bhagavatam, it's sufficient if you read in the right consciousness to take you back to Godhead, right? Now, so therefore, love will be pervaded, the whole Bhagavatam from start to finish is the book of love, and love will be pervading it through every single chapter, every canto. Obviously, we know that the culmination is 10th canto. We know that, right? And the first 9 cantos lead up to the 10th canto. And the first 9 cantos will talk about the greatness of Krishna, his creative potencies, his powers, his incarnations, the secondary creation, the primary creation. All these things are there to show Krishna's greatness. But even in these preliminary chapters, there's still a lot of love that is there for us to access. And to be honest, it's really good because, you know, let's say, for example, you're reading the Bhagavatam and, you know, you leave your body before getting to the 10th canto, right? Even if you read in the right consciousness, whatever canto you left off on before you leave your body, you know that you've got, if you did it in the right consciousness, you've got enough of nectar of love to carry you back to Godhead. Of course, if you can get to the 10th canto and beyond, even better. But the point is that love has to be there in every single chapter. The whole book is bursting in love. Just like whichever part of a rasgulla you eat, in one sense, it doesn't matter because it's all bursting with the juice.
Right. Thank you very much. Actually, it reminded me of another analogy. Somebody asked, you know, didn't know what gold is, and they told them that it's on top of the stairs, and he walked up the stairs and found gold, but he looked back, the whole step was made of gold. So it's a bit like, okay.
Yeah, that's a really good example, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Pallab. I recognize your voice.
Yes, Prabhuji, very nice sessions you have taken. Probably this is the last questions, and I don't want to, linger the sessions for you all. This is Prabhuji. What actually I'm asking you. We get many questions being raised by many people, within our Sanatan community, outside our Hinduism as well. So in Veda, because I think other than our Hindu people, because we have been oak Hindu nowadays, and so the other people from the different religion, they have been studying recently more of about our, scriptures. So the questions, the challenge that we have been facing is talking about our Vedas, which are, Shruti, isn't it, Prabhu? And all the Puranas, including Bhagavatam, which is the best Puranas, these are all Smriti. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the Shruti is been emanated from Lord, which is more, they say, which is more authentic. Yeah. Whereas the the Smriti written by like here Basdev. So they have according to their analogy, because this is not from God, they try to prove that. And what is the message you can pass on this?
Okay. Okay, this is quite a the big topic you're talking about. I'll just make, just for the benefit of everyone and time's sake. Okay, so with the Vedas, you have Shruti scriptures. These are direct revelations coming from Krishna. Okay, like the four Vedas, like the Upanishads, like the Samhitas, all these kind of things. These are direct revelations, and the understanding is that these are directly spoken by Krishna and passed down exactly as it is, does not get changed. Smritis are like supplementary scriptures, commentaries, histories that are written by other great acharyas, personalities, who then expand on what the Shrutis are. Okay, so yes, if you look at, for example, if you look at itihasas like Mahabharata was not directly recited by Krishna. It was recited by, well, as we know, Vedavyas.
Yes.
If you look at Ramayana, it was recited by Valmiki. Bhagavatam, recited by Sukadeva Goswami. It's said that any Smriti scripture, for it to be considered bona fide, it still has to have its roots in Shruti. In other words, any statement that a Smriti scripture makes has to be corroborated by Shruti. So for example, let's say if Bhagavatam says that, okay, Sri Krishna is the personality of Godhead, as it does, right? Krishna is tu Bhagavan Swayam. That's all well and good, but does it have a statement in the Shruti to back it up, right? Which it does, many, right? So therefore you can see from this that there are statements in the Shruti on which the Smriti scriptures are based. Like, for example, if we go down further, like let's say, we follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We also know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as far as our scriptures are concerned, like Chaitanya Charitamrita and things, he is God. Now, that's very nice to know, but I guess an opposition will say, where does it say in Shruti that he's God? Like a person from another Vedic area would say, where? So then there are actually many verses. In fact, in the Madhya Lila, there are verse after verse mentioning Mahaprabhu's divinity. Kali Santar Upanishad also talks about the divinity of Mahaprabhu, the Hare Krishna mantra. Rig Veda talks about the golden Brahman boy who's going to come in Kali Yuga to give the Sankirtan Yagya, things like that. So there's always corroboration in what the Shruti say and on which the Smriti scriptures are based. Okay. So if anyone says that our scriptures and all the Smriti scriptures we have, the Puranas, Itihasas, Srimad Bhagavatam, they are all based on Shruti. They are all based on the Shruti scriptures, but they unpack them more based on realizations and revelations of acharyas. Now remember that the Smriti scriptures themselves have to be composed by acharyas. Not just that anyone can make a book or a Smriti and call it Smriti. Like, it's not that I can suddenly write something on Krishna, make a book and say, this is a Smriti scripture officially. Yes, this should be part of the Vedas. Who am I? I'm like no one, right? It has to be by a bona fide acharya, right? A self-realized soul, like Vedavyas, like Valmiki, and other such personalities. An interesting one here is like the Gita. So Gita, like if you look at, okay, what is the Mahabharata? Is Mahabharata Shruti or Smriti?
Smriti.
Smriti. Because
Smriti.
Mahabharata was not directly recited by Krishna, it was recited by Veda Vyas.
Yes.
But what about Gita? Is Gita Shruti or Smriti?
Both.
Yeah, that's why Gita is often referred to as Gita Upanishad, because it was recited by Krishna. So it's almost like, sometimes you have books where it's like a normal book, but within it you've got an excerpt of a conversation, So that's like the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is like a book within a certain narrative, and with that you've got a direct excerpt by Krishna himself giving this Bhagavad Gita. Now, obviously for us, right, we read the Bhagavad Gita, and the verses themselves are Shruti. They are Krishna's verse. Krishna himself is saying those verses. But the purports that we're reading afterwards are Smriti. Prabhupada is giving this commentary. But Prabhupada has a right to do that because he's a self-realized pure devotee of the Lord. He can do a commentary on it, which we can learn from. So, so in reference to your question, if people ever contend with what we're saying, you can say that there is not a single thing that we follow that is not mentioned or corroborated in the Shruti scriptures. Any statement that we have, whether it's Krishna is the supreme person of Godhead, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the way to go to Krishna, all the different, sort of principles that we follow and the purpose that Srila Prabhupada has given, it all has its roots in the Shruti scriptures.